Welcome into Rockets Today, presented by Prize Picks. I am your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, Ime Udoka and Rafael Stone said, "What?" Yes, I'll tell you exactly what they had to say at their end-of-season interview, and maybe it's shocking to some of you, maybe it won't be as shocking, but equally disappointing for everybody, I would say, because obviously the Rockets season ended in a disappointing fashion, and Udoka and Stone had to somewhat face the music, even though they kind of danced around a lot of the subjects. We'll talk about everything they had to say during today's episode, and this is why you subscribe, folks. The latest Rockets news and rumors all year long. Free videos. They're always going to be 100% for free. The NBA draft, free agency, NBA trades, and more. We are interactive and informative, and we always want to hear from you. So if there's anything that you want me to talk about around this team, around the NBA, go down in the comment section and let me know what you want me to discuss on future episodes, because this is a show made by the people for the people. So if it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't be able to make these shows. So I appreciate everybody who's clicking into today's video, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for more Rockets content all year long. All right, let's go with the first subject that I would like to discuss. And I think a lot of Rockets fans are questioning going into this offseason, who in the hell is going to be the point guard going into next year? Well, Rockets GM Rafael Stone had this to say. I don't believe in philosophically just going to get a point guard because they're a point guard. I mean, I guess. I guess, in the NBA, positionless is, a thing. But at the same time, if you need a point guard, wouldn't you want to go look for a point guard? That's really confusing to me. And then Ime Udoka was asked kind of later on in the press conference about, the two guys they have on their roster right now, not Fred VanVleet, but the two guys who played this year, Thompson and Reed Sheppard at the point guard position. This is what he had to say about those guys. When you look at Amen and Reed, that's not their natural position that they've played. Amen has had the ball in his hands a ton. Reed has played more off ball coming off the bench at Kentucky. With Rob Dillingham, he didn't even play the point. We looked at it coming into the draft. He had 16 pick and rolls as a freshman at Kentucky, so he's more of an off-ball movement kind of guy. For Amen, I think it was just that understanding of balance. The last 2 months of the season, you kind of saw his numbers take off and his comfort level take off from there, and his understanding take off. The point touches more were evident, not shooting in the crowd or finding his outlets. He became more consistent. Couple that with Fred coming back, and you don't have to rely on Fred like we did our first 2 years for turnovers and getting in our sets. So obviously, there is the factor of Fred VanVleet being able to come back from injury. He got injured right before the season started, forcing him to miss the entire year. And, obviously him being back will be a, welcome sight for all Rockets fans, and I'm pretty sure for Ime Udoka. But at the same time, does that mean the point guard issue is fixed? Do we not have to search and add another point guard to this roster? Or does he think the combination of Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, and Reed Sheppard will do? Because as he just said, that's not Amen Thompson, Reed Sheppard's natural position. Reed Sheppard, only had 16 pick and rolls as a freshman at Kentucky, was not really a dominant ball handler, and he was kind of forced into that role by the Rockets due to injuries and due to the fact that they needed somebody to bring the ball up. So I'm going to ask you this question at home. Do you think the Rockets need to add another point guard this offseason? Because according to Rafael Stone, it's not a need. It's, just possibly a want for them. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section, because as I'm looking at some of the top point guard options in free agency, I do think these names are somewhat interesting. You have Collin Sexton, who, I think at the very least would be a really good sixth man. And I think that kind of goes for all these guys, right? Maybe not a elite point guard, but I think would be an upgrade at the point guard position for what we had. And it kind of sucks because these guys, a lot of these guys, the Rockets could have easily traded for at the trade deadline during this season, and they decided to be stagnant and not make any moves. Like with Coby White, whenever he went to the Charlotte Hornets instead of coming to the Houston Rockets. Ayo Dosunmo, I really wanted him from the Chicago Bulls, ended up going to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and what do you know? They made it to round 2 of the NBA playoffs. They'll be facing off up against the San Antonio Spurs. And same goes for Bones Hyland, somebody who I think is a really good, extra guard out there on the floor, good shooter, is able to, be possibly that sixth man, that backup point guard, or even a spot starter at point guard for your Houston Rockets if they were to make any of these moves in the offseason, or they could possibly make a trade. And you best believe I'm going to be making some more trade videos during this offseason because those rumors have been running rampant. Now, coming up, I have more of what was discussed in this press conference for you. But before I get into all that, couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors over at Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. For good reason. I love Prize Picks, and I know you will too. Get started with them today as, like I said, they make watching sports that much more fun, and you can win some cash while you're doing it. Playoff basketball is getting going, and obviously our team's not in it. But that doesn't stop me from putting in lineups just like this one from our team here at Chat Sports. This is some of the games that are going on tonight. They have Joel Embiid, more than 41.5 points, rebounds, and assists. He went off in Game 7 for the Sixers. And then you have Naz Reid, more than 1.5 3-pointers made. And then Victor Wembanyama, more than 3.5 blocked shots. I would say the 7'6" guy with a 7-foot wingspan might have a good chance at blocking some shots. You can use this lineup or go ahead and make your own. Just do it with our friends over at Prize Picks. It's as easy as that. As you saw up on screen, you just got to pick 2 to 6 players and go more or less on their stat projections. New users, listen up. Download the Prize Picks app today with the link in the comments and description and use our code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All that information down in the comments and description of today's show. All right, we'll continue on with what was discussed in this press conference. And I do have to give a quick shout out to Clutch fans and multiple other content creators. I know Bias Houston, Brado, they were on top of it with all of the, presser notes and everything that happened. So shout out to them. This coming in from Clutch fans during the press conference. Rafael Stone, in terms of the roster, we will look at everything over the offseason, but we think that we have the players in our locker room and we can win a lot of games and be competitive. Stone added that Amen, Jabari, Şengün, Reed, Tari all need to be way better basketball players next season. He says he expects growth from them. And, it is worth noting that the Rockets had one of the youngest lineups ever in NBA history during a playoff series, especially without Kevin Durant, with all those young guys. And it looks like the Rockets are going to try to keep their young core together for the most part, right? Stone also mentioned Amen Thompson and Tari Eason, and he said, I fully expect they will be with us for the foreseeable future. So will the Rockets try to keep this entire young core together? Because Tari Eason, he's going to need a new contract this offseason. Amen Thompson, he's due for a new deal as well. Alperen Şengün, he got that new deal this past offseason. And obviously you still have Jabari and Reed under contract. So, as I'm looking at it, they're trying to keep all these young guys together and maybe add some more pieces. That could get difficult, though, if you're looking to pay guys like Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, and then also add guys on top of that. Rafael Stone went on to say this as well at the press conference today. I think the season was frustrating and disappointing. We expected to win more games in the regular season than we did, and we expected to win more games in the playoffs than we did. I agree, right? Like, as Rockets fans, I think going into that Lakers series, everybody thought, the Rockets are going to win in 5 or 6. And it ended up where the Rockets almost got swept. They were down 3-0. And I do get it. There were injuries to the squad last season. Obviously, Kevin Durant getting injured didn't help things going into the playoffs as well. But at some point, that can't be an excuse, right? The Lakers on the other side, their top 2 players were injured for basically the entire series. Reeves didn't come back until Game 5. Their best player on the Lakers was out the entire series. Luka Doncic did not play. But we didn't hear the Lakers making any excuses. We didn't hear the Lakers saying, we can't win because we don't have X player, this player, this player. No, they just went out there. They made adjustments. They, figured out how to beat the Rockets, and they did that. So at some point, there needs to be some accountability for not being able to adjust, not being able to use our guys differently, or, the guys that were playing on the court, them just not cutting it for being good enough to, lead a team in a series up against the Lakers or up against any of these Western Conference teams, because every single year we see how the Western Conference is an absolute gauntlet. So if you want to make it through the playoffs, you need your guys to step up. And speaking of that, with KD and all these guys out, Ime Udoka on the offense, will it be different next year? He says he expects to play differently offensively next year just based on the personnel that was missing, Fred, Adams, KD. He says he doesn't see any changes on the coaching staff. And I will say the funniest reply to this was them saying this is the Rockets offense next year compared to this year. I mean, I think, especially being like, oh, we're not going to make any changes on the coaching staff. We're not, and especially throughout this whole press conference, I get they didn't want to tip their hand in any moves that they possibly want to make this offseason, but they're like, oh, yeah, we want to keep KD around. We want to, keep all of our young guys. We don't want to make any changes to the coaching staff. Okay, so basically no changes. We're going to run it back for next year is kind of the vibe that I was getting from Stone, Ime Udoka, and just the whole vibe around this Rockets team going into next year. And I will say, I do think there needs to be some major change up, whether that's one of the young guys moving on from them and, trading for a superstar, or making a Kevin Durant trade this offseason as well. As, multiple reports have come out that the Rockets don't intend on, wanting to move Kevin Durant or moving on from Ime Udoka. I do feel like you can't just run it back next year and the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I think you have to change something next season. And speaking of Kevin Durant, speaking of all that, it was brought up, the KD files and all the burner account stuff, and this from Big Sarge Media. For us, it's almost a little bit laughable. Rockets coach Ime Udoka talking about the articles and the chemistry around the locker room. Obviously talking about the KD files and all that stuff. GM Rafael Stone chimed in at the end. There were people who were around the team, wasn't the ones writing it. So basically saying that all the reports of there being friction in the locker room and stuff between teammates, that's all false. None of that actually happened. Sure, yeah, I could see how it kind of gets blown out of proportion, but to be like, oh yeah, there was no friction at all between anybody on our team. Let's get real, right? Obviously, there was some friction. There was some, I would say dissonance from the top to bottom of the guys in the locker room and how things were being run this past season for the Houston Rockets. And that's another reason why I feel like there has to be some sort of change made on this Rockets team. And that's why I will be breaking down all the trade rumors, all the free agency rumors, all offseason long. Make sure to give me a follow on X at Jeremy Chugs for the latest going on around everything Houston sports, Houston Rockets, Houston Astros, Houston Texans. I got you covered. And if you made it to the end of today's show, make sure you hit that subscribe button for free Rockets content all year long. I got you covered. Your one-stop shop for everything around the Houston Rockets.